So tell me about your typical day.
Typical day. Well, let's see. After carrying book bags, heavy, cold book bags, onto the bookmobile, maybe the ones that we pulled from the night before to put to shelf, and we got our stamps ready for the date due, and our files we took off, and as you can see by the schedule, we had a certain time to be at certain places. And we would stop, blow that horn, and people would either come or not come, and we'd wait, and we would process the books, take the requests, shelve them a little bit on the leaving side, you know, and then we'd travel on. Sometimes we were a little bit late, and we had to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. But there is one place between St. Martin's and Showell with a rise in the road, a railroad track, and a curve, all in one sweep. And if you forgot, you had to pick up all the books because they all flipped over. I'll never forget that spot, because a lot of times we were sort of late and we'd hit that spot. and we knew it, but you couldn't put the brakes on, because then they really would all flip off.
And all the books would go. And then you had to reshelve them.
We had some pretty good routes that, and you know, that we could cut across.
Really? So you knew the area pretty well. Yes.
We had to be careful of hunting season, because if we went to the Pocomoke Forest, and we did make stops there, somehow or other I always managed to schedule that for the hunting season. I don't know why I did that, but we had all these hunters, you know, out on the road, parked on the road, and you had to get by. But the worst thing was to meet a combine on the road with the bookmobile, because one of you had to get off.
But let me go over to you guys for a minute. Diane, you came in late 70s, right?
Yes.
All right, so what was your bookmobile experience at that point?
I enjoyed the bookmobile. I enjoyed seeing the enthusiasm of the kids with reading.
Really?
Yeah, they were anxious to get on there and anxious to see what we had. And I don't know, it was just nice seeing that.
I was going to say, you must miss that now, because I don't think we see as much enthusiasm for books as we did.
Being a parent, no, you don't see that.
Right. Now, how long did you work on the bookmobile?
Probably, I'm going to guess, maybe a couple of years, maybe.
It was a little more than that.
A little more, 2.5 years, maybe, somewhere around there.
Okay. And how did you guys at that point, now who did you work with?
Norma.
You worked, okay, all right. And did you do the same thing, take turns driving?
Not as much.
No.
I let her do that. It was huge, and I was not comfortable with driving.
Now, were most of your, I guess, customers, were most of them kids?
A lot of them were.
Did you usually see kids on
Yes.
bookmobiles? Okay.
A lot of them were.
And were you still going into schools by then in the late?
Basically what I did, I worked during a summer program.
Okay.
And what I did was to read, primarily was to read and to assist Miss Northam or Miss Allen, whichever one was driving the bus, the bookmobile at the time. And after finished those duties, I mean, like they said, that we would park, and I would set up outside, oftentimes under a tree or whatever. You had different areas, I mean, that people would meet you, and wherever it was, you'd set up, and that would be to read to the children that did come.
Really?
Really.
That's wonderful. That's
It was interesting.
Yeah, I bet.
And
did you have I bet you saw the same kids over and over again, probably.
Well, the whole thing, through the summers, by the time you would go through a schedule and everything, you might not you didn't get to see those kids every week.
Really?
So, but you would see them off and on. So I thought it was pretty unique with them having to do this on a regular basis, because of the fact that it was just like a part of the family.
Right.
They became like a part of the family because they were old friends, and to meet and how they met the people on a regular basis. The people, they knew exactly what they wanted, and I was only 16, and so I didn't get to drive the bus or do any of those things. I got to just observe, and at that time, of course, I looked at it as it was a job, and it was a means to an end.
Right.
That I was going back to school,
Right.
but it was still interesting. It gave me a lot of time. I got a lot of time to read as I traveled from spot to spot,
Really?
and sometimes waiting on persons to get there. So you had an opportunity to actually enlarge yourself while you were there.
So you were 16 when you were working at the Bookmobile.
Yes.
Now, how did you get that job?
Well, that was, I applied at the Board of Education.
Okay.
And at that time, the superintendent for the black schools or the colored schools, as they might say, was Mr. Fletcher, and he hired me as I don't even remember the program, but anyhow, I was able to work under that program
Okay.
as a 16-year-old.
And you mentioned something earlier that I thought was really interesting about just because this area was so rural and still is to a big degree, and the transportation issue.
That was a
Yeah, tell me
real
about
issue.
that.
When you, at that time, how many libraries did we actually have? We had
Well,
one
we had all but
Pocomoke, Ocean City, Berlin, and then you, and Snow Hill. And then you had all the rural out areas like Campbelltown.
Yeah.
Campbelltown,
Onshire
yeah.
Station.
Onshire is what, about 4 miles outside of Berlin, 4 or 5 miles outside of Berlin, and what, about 13 miles from Snow Hill.
section out back of Pocomoke.
Campbelltown is about how many miles from Berlin?
At least 10.
About
Yeah,
10 miles from,
quite a
and
ways.
these kids, they just didn't have the transportation. And I mean, that's just in the northern end. But if you go in the southern end, where you just had the library at Pocomoke, we still serviced from the Virginia line to the Delaware line. And with just the 4 libraries, you had, you really needed this service. And because illiteracy was a problem that we were facing at the time. And this was an answer to it.
And I want to make sure we go back and touch on the fact that you did make house calls. I mean, you went to farmhouses, right?
We did on several long rural routes. Yes, yes, we did. But it was very brief because it was in between schedules. I mean, in between the times. I don't know about Norma.
That's what I
No, we
mean.
had-
These people were like friends to them.
Right.
And they did special things. I mean, if they had the opportunity, they would do it because of the fact that they were there to help. They were not there just to say it was a job.
Right.
It was not that. And that's what I found so interesting about that, even at that age. The fact that the willingness to help.
And the camaraderie.
Right,
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really.
exactly.
Camaraderie.
But you know, it wasn't easy to set up those rural routes. When we first started out and said, well, we're going to go here and there and so forth, we would sit there and not a soul would come.
Really?
Because they were suspicious, I guess, of us, the county, whatever. And after a while, 1 or 2, the kids especially were always curious. And after a while, they would start to come. But it was difficult at first, and we had to prove ourselves, or we would be taken off the road, or that stop would be taken off. So we really had to prove ourselves.
And prove yourself, how? What do you mean prove yourself?
We had to show the circulation.
You had to
We had to prove that the circulation was worth going there and
into that
stopping
area.
there.